be delivering T levels but are unable to attend today's webinar for whatever reason, we'll then be able to host it on our YouTube channel, and then you'll get a recording to that as well. So Mike, thanks for that as well. So let's have a look at the agenda. Rob? Okay, so as mentioned, Rob mentioned earlier around the introductions. We'll be doing that very, very shortly. Mike will then be taking us through our website and having a look at the new web pages and some of the activity around that. We'll also then be looking at the qualification handbook. So as mentioned, the qualification is actually been live and accredited. So we'll walk you through the handbook and some of the contents around that. And then we'll be looking at some of the specialism content, and we'll be discussing the content within as well. We'll then look at the support resources. Now, a lot of you will have heard about Hodder Education. Hodder Education are a partner of ours, and they are partnering us in terms of T levels around some of the resources. And again, Rob will walk you through that in a little bit more detail later on. Finally, we'll just have a mop-up Q&A. So any questions that we haven't been able to answer, we should be able to do that towards the end.
Thanks, Liam. I have just started recording. If anybody's got any issues, just drop it in the chat. But I have just started recording the session. Thanks, everybody.
Brilliant. Okay, so this slide just gives you a nice little snapshot of the construction and BSc T-level team. So obviously for attendees on this webinar, this is BSc focused. The other part of the T-level is on-site construction. So for today's purpose, on today's panel, you have myself, Salim Visram, Lead Industry Manager for Building Services Engineering. Also, we have Alison Whittle, Technical Advisor for Post 16, and Alison has a wealth of information around T levels and around the Post 16 vocational landscape. We also have Mike Scarrett. So Mike is a product specialist from EAL, and you'll be aware that EAL are a partner of ours for T levels for both construction and BSc. You also have heard Rob Malander as well. So Rob is our technical advisor for Building Services Engineering. And on that note, I will pass you over to Mike.
Thanks, Liam. Is it worth us introducing ourselves if we want to, for those others that's attending?
Yes,
today?
Apologies. Yes, if you don't mind. Shall we go around the table, so to speak? So let's do it by alphabetical order, if that's okay. I know some of you have already put in the chat around your name and your organization and when you're going to be hosting your T levels, whether it's going to be in September or the following year. So Andrew, would you mind going first, please, if that's okay?
No, Andy Beresford, EQA with EAL. Just here to try and find out the questions that centres are asking now, so that any of my centres that don't manage to get onto here, I can hopefully give them the best advice when they get into contact with me.
Brilliant. Thanks, Andrew. Andy, would you mind going next, please? You're on mute. Andy, are you there? If not, we can come back to you, Andy. Paul, would you mind going next?
Hi, guys. Apologies for the washing machine going in the background. Joys of working from home. I'm Paul Hellier. I'm from South Devon College. I'm Programme Coordinator for Building Services. We're in Wave 2, so we'll be starting September 2021. I'm just here to pick up anything really on the BSc, on delivery, qualification handbook, mainly how the core and the specialist subjects will be delivered, and hopefully get some insight into how we can sort of set timetabling up for a September start, really.
Fantastic. That's great. That's really good to hear, Paul, that you're ready. Well, not necessarily ready to go, but September is your go live. So excellent. So anything we can help on today's call and obviously going forward, we'd be happy to oblige. Scott, I know Scott, you put something in the chat, but would you like to just introduce yourself and let everybody know where you're from and whether or not you're going to be starting T levels this year or the following year?
Yeah, hi, I'm Scott Austin from Yeovil College, so not too far from South Devon, so we might be able to share some ideas, hopefully. We're not due to start till September 22, but obviously thinking about the planning that's going to need to go into it and, you know, marketing it correctly so that we get a good group of learners to begin with. And I did attend the plumbing and gas session on Monday and just thought actually today might be a good recap, so I understand that it's the same across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, welcome again, Scott, because obviously, you know, even for us, you know, we're learning new things every day. So any information that we can share on today's call, I'm sure it will be useful. I think Keith Powell, if you're, I think Keith Powell has just joined us. So Keith, would you like to introduce yourself? Let us know which organisation you're from, whether or not you're going to be delivering T levels this year, next year, or today is just more of an information kind of, you know, gathering.
Yeah, of course. Keith Powell, I'm EQA for EAL. So I cover the southwest of England and South Wales, specifically electrical, but also the engineering as well. My real reason for being here today is just really so that I'm getting a consistent message to centres. So learn a little bit more about what's going on, what's being brought up as concerns, and then hopefully, like I said, it's a consistent message across what's going on.
Fantastic, great, Keith. Welcome, and
thank you.
Glad you're here as well. I don't know if Andy is available or if he's having issues. If you are able to put something in the chat, Andy, just to let us know that you're there. If we can't, otherwise we can move back onto Mike, because I know we've got quite a bit to go through.
Andy's just dropped something in the chat, Salim. He's having issues with his mic, so we'll drop
okay.
Okay. We'll leave Andy out of that one. Thanks.
Great. Go for it, Mike. Over to you then.
Great. Thanks, Salim. And yeah, we're just going to have a look initially at the website navigation. So if you do have a smart device or a second screen, it would be most useful. Rob, shall we have a go at doing it live again? Or
yeah. My internet can't be as slow as yesterday, can it? Let's give it another go. I'll share screen again, ladies and gents, and then hopefully you should be able to see our website in just a moment. If I just share my screen.
Okay, so obviously first thing is to navigate to City and Guilds homepage. So let's see how quick internet. Oh, look at that, lightning speed. Okay, so top right hand side there, you'll see the search option there. If we put the program of study number in there, 8710, and press search, it comes up with search results. Down the bottom of the page here, then we click on the level 3. And we come to a familiar page really, which has got an information tab and a document tab. So we're going to click on the document tab. And initially then, let's have a quick look at the assessment materials. Not covering this specifically today, but it'll just show you what are some of the sample assessment materials in there. So Rob, if you click on one of them, let's go for that. You'll see there, obviously the assessments related to electrotechnical in there, the sample assessment materials. Click on the core, please, Rob. And you'll see there within the core, there's the employer set project in which there's a number of tasks, and also the sample core exams in there, in which there's 2 exams, which I'll go into a little bit more in detail. But specifically, that's going to be for a later Teams meeting, really. Specifically, we're going to look at the centre document today, and within there is the specification or the course handbook. So if you could click and download that, we'll have a look in there. Okay, so if we can navigate then to page 12 on this course handbook, we come up with an overview really of the contents of the technical qualification there. So you'll be aware here that you've got a mandatory core content, 871030, that has a unique program of study attached to it with a 30. So if a learner is wanting to complete a technical qualification, let's say it's in electrotechnical engineering, they would have to register on the 871030 mandatory core, as well as the 871033, which is electrotechnical engineering. For those that are not familiar with this, obviously things have changed slightly over the months, in as much as that we do now have standalone occupational specialisms options, as you can see there, and also the combinations, in which Rob will go into in a little bit more detail later on. So just as an activity then, obviously we can see here that there's guided learning hours attached to these. So if we can just scroll back to the core, Rob, so we can see that. You'll see there that there's 520 guided learning hours attached to the core. And we'll have a look at the content of that soon, but each standalone qualification has a specific number of guided learning hours attached to it, and so do the combinations as well. So just as an activity then, if you can scroll back down then to page 16 of this document, you'll find a section there on resource requirements. Quite sort of comprehensive, in as much as it tells you all the resources, the staffing resources, etc., you'll need to deliver both the core and the occupational specialisms. And then on page 21 of this document too, we have, the induction requirements really. And we would say that this is obviously a level 3 qualification. Its content, as we'll see soon, is slightly different to really what we've been used to delivering before. And we do highly recommend that a thorough initial assessment and induction are done on learners, prior to being enrolled onto the T levels and also on program as well. Okay, so just as if we can scroll down to page 53, please, Rob, of this document. Just want to look specifically at the construction and BSc core. You'll note here that the construction BSc core is it's made up of the 14 knowledge outcomes, as you can see there. Some of them we will be familiar with, like knowledge outcome 12, which is looking at the systems across the building services engineering sector. But others may not be as familiar, like, for instance, knowledge outcome 8, construction information and data principles, knowledge outcome 6, which is construction measurement principles, etc., etc. So it's worth noting here that you've got a common core across construction on-site and construction building services. Construction building services, though, has almost a second, core attached and integral in it as well. So that's why it's bigger than the construction on core. It does include both construction and building services. It's certainly worth looking at the core content in detail, which is detailed in this course handbook, and going through it, learning outcome assessment criteria by assessment criteria, really. And really, that's as much as I want to say at the moment on the core. I'm going to hand over to Rob to look at more the occupational specialisms side now.
Thanks a lot, Mike. So before we do that, is there anything or questions in the chat, or does anybody want to raise a hand just to ask any questions around the navigation there? Did everybody find that okay? And the idea being, there's a lot of useful information in the handbook. Just another couple examples while people are thinking if they've got any questions. So all the assessment structure around page 26, it gives you all the assessment methods. Going into 27, how each component's assessed, when they're assessed, the model for assessment, timings, grading. It's all in the course handbook, right down to things like, test specifications and lots of useful information. So some of the handbooks you know, in the past, there's a lot of information in there where, you know, do we really need to access it on a regular basis? No, probably not. Whereas this qualification is very different. The reason for us doing the navigation today is you really need to be downloading this and having a good look through it yourselves if you're potentially going to deliver in the future. So that was the idea around that. What we're going to do now, if there's anything in the chat, if one of the other attendees could just give me a shout as I'm sort of progressing through this, we're going to just have a look at how things are assessed and structured with regards to the occupational specialisms. So when we send you the presentation through, which we will do after today's session, you'll get all the navigation slides. So if you want to forward this on to any members of staff to let them find the handbook and download it and have a go at these activities, etc., we just decided to run it live, but there is slides to back this up. So what we're going to do now is look at the actual technical content of the occupational specialism. So before we do that, and I go back to the handbook live, I'm just going to run through this on a slide first. So this is basically how the qualification content is structured. So this is an example of some of the on-site core content. As you can see, this learning outcome is health and safety. That's pretty familiar terminology, the learning outcome, as well as criteria we've seen in the past in qualifications. As you can see, this one is the construction legislation and regulations. And then the content of that is elaborated by a range. And that provides you then the detail of, you know, what construction legislation you've got to teach. That's what would be assessed. So we can't really assess anything out of the range. When we're writing assessments, we have to map everything back to learning outcomes criteria and the range when we're creating the assessment material. But something new probably for T levels is the what do learners need to learn section. Sorry, need to learn section. And this elaborates further on the outcome and the range and gives you more of a verbal insight into the depth of delivery and maybe what should be taught. So that's very useful if you're creating things like schemes of work, etc., and very useful if you've not taught a relevant topic before. As Mike's just alluded to, there's a lot of new topics and learning outcomes which we've not seen in BSE qualifications before, which are very construction orientated, especially in the core. So by using this what do learners need to learn section, it should give the insight into what scope of delivery that section requires. As well as that, we've also got a relationship to core skills there. You can see on the bottom right of the slide. This relates back to the handbook again. I think the BSE one is about page 22. The slide is generic for construction. The construction one, if you're dealing with that qual as well, will be about page 20. And then things like general competencies in maths and English and digital skills are also mapped back from each learning outcome to the core skills which are identified in the course handbook around page 25. So if you need to map anything like that back in your schemes of work, it's all been done for you in the qualification handbook. So if you need to show how you're meeting things like that for maybe functional skills, for an example, as how it could work, it's something you can use the course handbook for. So that's how things are structured. What I'm going to do now is just drop back into the course handbook and we're going to have a look at this activity. So what we want you to do now is just go to the index at the front of the handbook. It's around page 3. I'll put it up on screen actually. Let me drop back into the handbook and I'll flick onto page 3, which you should be able to see on screen again now. It's not 3. It's 4 onwards is the content. So the content on page 5 then rolls into the relevant occupational specialisms. So for instance, the building services engineering course starts on page 52 through to 109. And then we've got the occupational specialisms after that. What I'd like you to do is just choose one which is relevant to you and your delivery. Have a look how it's structured for a few minutes. Have a look at some of the technical content. Have a look at, you know, at this what learners need to learn section and things like that. And then we're just going to open the floor up really if anybody's got any comments, questions, anything to do with T levels, not just this occupational specialism. We can have a little bit of a Q&A session before we move forward. So I'm just going to pause there for a few minutes. if you look at the content on page 5, it should be more relevant to the occupational specialisms, running into page 6, where we've got protection systems, refrigeration, ventilation. That should identify to you the page you need in the course handbook. So for instance, protection systems 312, if you just type it into the top of the PDF there, 312, and return, it'll take you to the beginning of that section. Have a look through the section. Have a look at this section at the front of each specialism. It's an overview of what the specialism is about. It tells you. So this is quite a new specialism. We've not really seen this in qualifications before. Protection systems engineering. Have a look at what it's about. Have a look at what the general content is there in this what is this specialism about section. How learners might be introduced to the specialism. So why might they be interested in this specialism? And then the underpinning knowledge outcomes and performance outcomes are then identified at the start of the actual unit. And then it goes into the actual specialism content. And that's how when it's structured, like I've just shown you on the previous slide. So that's just a little insight into how things are structured, where to find the relevant content for each section. We'll just pause for a few minutes now, give you a chance just to have a quick look at that. We realise, we just dropped this on you today. We don't worry too much if you haven't got too many technical questions to throw at us. Today's all about signposting you to the handbook, getting you familiar with things, letting you go away and having a look at things. But we'll pause there for a few minutes. Let everybody just navigate themselves around the handbook and see if we've got any questions we can field before we move on. Thanks, everybody. We'll give you a few minutes to do that. Okay, I'll bring things back in just to see if anybody has got any points. If you want to ask anything at all, we've got the relevant people which should hopefully be able to answer it today on the call. Feel free to raise your hand or drop anything in the chat. I've just dropped in there as well in the chat so you can access it later if need be, the recording link. So this is just to our website. We're going to host all the recordings on the T Level's website. It might take a day or so for us to get this up there, but obviously I know a lot of you manage various areas, curriculum areas and that type of thing. So if you wanted to share this, again, I'll send the PowerPoint slides through. If you wanted to share this with staff for future reference, as well as any of the other specialisms, apart from the refrigeration one, because we didn't really get anybody from that area representing that session. We had 2 or 3 people on the session, but it wasn't sort of a valuable one to record perhaps. So we've recorded all the other sessions which will be hosted on the website. That's along with the construction recordings as well. So if anybody manages the construction curriculum areas, my colleague Jason Howe, whose details was on the slide which Salim introduced, he's been running very similar sessions for the construction specialisms. So, you know, your plastering, your brick, your carpentry and joinery, etc. So they'll be recorded as well, and there'll be recordings on the website for them as well. So people are working remotely at the moment. Hopefully, if you can't get in to see people face to face, you'll be able to give them some information with regards to the recordings and the webinar slides. Okay, I can't see anything in the chat. I am just sharing screen because I'm just going to move back onto the presentation if there isn't anything. We don't want to take up unnecessary time. Paul's got a question. Do you want to just unmute yourself and speak, Paul?
Yeah, hi Rob, thank you. It was just something I picked up on the qualification handbook regarding staff needing to have a level 2 in maths and English.
Okay.
Could they be working towards this level 2 if they haven't obviously obtained it for qualification approval? Yeah,
I mean, I don't see any reason why not. I mean, that's guidance for our EQAs to work to, and I think that the reasoning that's behind it, that's in there, is obviously we've had to work with IFATE to come up with all those approval requirements. Similarly, you know, the MVQ3 delivery requirements. I know Alison's got her hand up. She might be able to come in there. Do you want to mention something, Alison?
Yeah, it came up in a couple of times this in some of the one of the first wave T levels that we weren't involved in. As long as the IQA or somebody within your centre holds that qualification, everybody else can be seen to be working towards.
Brilliant. That's
okay. Really
useful information. Thank you, Alison. I've learned something there. Every day's a school day. So yeah, thanks for that, Ali. It's something we might have to look at the wording in the handbook. I'll make a note of that as part of the feedback we've been recording for the sessions and go back to Richard on that. Just on that point, what you'll see in there as well is it mentions for each curriculum area you need an MVQ3 or equivalent. And what they're meaning by that is, you know, it could be an old style qualification. So mine's advanced crafting plumbing, which would be suitable. So that's what they mean in each area by the qualification or equivalent. It's by a forerunner qualification, I think we used to call them. So if somebody's got an advanced craft or anything which is equivalent to a level 3, it's suitable in that curriculum area. So that's a requirement as well for delivery. When you look at resources, while we're on the topic as well, I think that may be able to be, we can probably improve the resources section a little bit as well. And I've fed that back to Richard. I think the resources list have come from, they've looked at the sample assessments and made a list of almost suitable resources, what are included in that. And we might be able to improve that section as well. We've had a little bit of feedback on that from previous events. So that's that. Any more questions before we just look at some of the other sections? And I appreciate this is new, and we've had more general questions in a lot of the sessions around T levels, not necessarily the content of the specialism. So feel free to drop anything in the chat during the session or raise your hand and we can come back to you at any point. That's not a problem. Other colleagues just might have to give me a shout up while I'm just reviewing the last few content points. So we'll have a quick look at future support. Feel free to keep having a squint at the handbook and come back with any questions on that, but I'm going to move on. So people this morning, some people might be quite new to this sort of delivery session. They might not have been involved in previous events for T levels. We've got a T level video page, I think it's called, which is we've produced in GoToWebinar, which you can access all previous webinars in as well. So again, if you've got members of staff who you're going to maybe be focusing on T levels, you should be able to access all previous support webinars we've run, which go into what a T level is and how they're structured and what industry placement is. And for example, on the last one we had the ESFA, DFE supporters, and we've had various other colleagues from organisations to come in and discuss things like work placement, industry placement. So there's some useful material on that. I'll drop that in the chat as well when I go back into that area before we leave, so everybody can access the chat then after today's call. But there's a couple of documents you just need to fill in. One is, so the first bullet is one you need to fill in once as a centre. It's the pre-approval form. If you haven't already as a centre, as an organisation, there's a link there when I send the slide through. I'll also drop it in the follow-up email. It's mandatory for all centres delivering T levels. We want to start the ball rolling with regards to getting your TQA, they're going to call them, I think, a T level external quality assurer. They're going to get you one of those allocated, get the approval process rolling. So that's all out of the way before you have to start thinking around delivery. And you've got a point of contact with regards to quality as well. So you only need to fill that in once as a centre. Then the second bullet there, please complete the T level provider contact update form. Everybody who's involved in T levels who wants to keep up to date should be completing that form. So forward that to any relevant members of staff, whether it's exam team, delivery network, etc. We're going to use that to invite people to this type of event moving forward. Now we're using Eventbrite as well. We'll also be able to invite you from past attendance. So we, just to make you aware, we are keeping everybody's details just in Eventbrite, so we can ping invites out through that for future events as well. Anybody's got any issues with that, we can remove you from the list. So that's
can I just add something to I had some questions yesterday after some meetings about obviously there was EAL centres and just asking about the approval process and whose platform would it be on, etc., etc.
Yep.
And where would all the materials be? And so obviously there's questions around that, and so just guiding them basically to City and Guilds platform for approvals, really, because we won't be approving them. EAL won't be approving them, but it'll be on the City and Guilds platforms themselves.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So yeah, that's where all the assessment material is going to be hosted. So you'll go through the approval process with City and Guilds, although we're obviously partners in delivery of the T level product itself. So yeah, thanks for that, Mike. So once you've completed those, we're just going to run through now some of the support material, what's going to be on offer. So for those who today said they're going to be delivering for 2021, you'll be pleased to know that we're going to have a building services book out in October, which is going to cover the content of the core. So produced by Hodder Education, our partners and publishing partners now. I'm not going to go through everything on the slide, but basically it's going to cover everything in the core exam and assessment process and the core content of that mandatory core, which everybody's got to sit. So this book will be available in October. We've got the ISBN number there. The cost there on the slide is paper-based cost, but this is going to be available like all the Hodder Education books. It's going to be available, as an ebook and as a teaching ebook as well, so you can actually use it on screen or remotely on Teams or something like that if you wanted to teach from it as well. They do a very cheap license, so I think it's cheap anyway for the comparison we've got to some of the other products I've looked at, which you can then buy to deliver that book remotely across the web or whatever you might have to do moving forward with the current climate. On-site construction one available as well. That's going to be slightly later in November 2021. What we're also going to be seeing from Hodder is where we've got existing curriculum area books in construction and building services. They're going to map the criteria from T Level to those books. And we've also suggested they might produce an electronic mapping document so you can actually click on the book to teach the relevant section and use it for T Level as well. So there's not going to be a separate T Level specialism book, but the criteria from T Level, they're going to map it to the existing books so you know which sections you can use to teach. So if you haven't looked on Hodder's website already, it might be a useful place you can sort of start and view the quality of those books already, because they are very popular for our current BSE qualifications. So that's support material. I'm just going to see if Salim can come in now and just very quickly mention qualification reforms and some of the actual reviews we've got going off and consultations at the moment. Salim, would you mind just running through that?
Yes, absolutely, Rob. Yeah, not a problem at all. So, as mentioned, there are, and you're probably aware of this, there is a level 3 consultation out at the minute for qualifications that are deemed not suitable, and obviously the funding will have been removed. So, for instance, our current 2365 and 6035 level 3 qualifications, they are still live, but funding was removed from July of this year. That's because there were suitable technical qualifications in place for centres to be able to deliver them. Now, there is a similar consultation that's going to be out over the course of the next few weeks, and that's for level 2 and below. So really, this is just really a call to action from us. So our funding department and our funding team will be able to speak to somebody at your college and just ask you a series of questions, which won't take any longer than about 10 minutes. And it would just give us an idea about the direction of travel. And it will also be able to give us a much bigger voice in going back to the Department for Education and let them know about which qualifications we would like to see continue be funded as well. So if you don't mind, and if you're happy for our for sitting guilds and somebody from our funding team to give you a call, that would be the preferred option. So if you don't mind, leave your name and the best contact number to call you on, and somebody will call you within the next 10 days for about, for a quick 5 to 10 minute conversation, really. So if you don't mind, put your details in the chat and somebody will contact you.
Thanks a lot, Salim. Appreciate that. You make, again, a far better job than me bluffing my way through that slide again. So that's more or less it from us for today. We don't want to overburden these sessions, but again, we're still going to be here for a while if required for any questions. What I'm also going to do is drop the survey into the chat as well. If you just forgive me, obviously I realise I'm sharing screen at the moment. I'm just going to drop that into the chat. If you don't mind, we're going to be running some future sessions. The next ones are on curriculum planning in February, which we're going to be rolling out very soon. So we're going to bring people together to discuss curriculum planning for events, to discuss maybe in the future teaching and learning, assessment methods, that type of thing. So if you don't mind completing the survey, the QR code should work as well. If you've got a QR scanner on your phone, it should only take you a couple of minutes. There's half a dozen very quick questions around what you thought of the event and any future suggestions which you would like us to cover for you, really. So, as an organisation, we're asking how we can support you for the future. So that would be really beneficial to us if you could complete that. One thing I will mention as well, I had a couple of suggestions yesterday. We had a very good session from electrotechnical. We grouped all the specialisms together, so protection systems and electronics and electrotechnical in general. And some of the managers and tutors on there were maybe discussing a forum. And I just wanted, you know, if anybody thinks that might be useful. I've seen a couple of people today, Yeovil, South Devon, you know, here's my contact details. We might be able to discuss a few things. It might be beneficial. I'm not sure what your thoughts are. If maybe we created a BSE tutor forum, and that might be able to be tailored. I don't know. We might be able to meet so often for, you know, generic questions and answers, and then we might be able to then maybe shape that into specialisms and group the mechanical together and maybe the more electrical bias together into a forum where we can maybe share good industry practice. Well, you know what? Obviously, we've developed a small part of T Level. T Level's not our product, so T Level is owned by our IFATE. We've created the technical qualification, so there's going to be probably wider questions around, you know, maths and English, which obviously you might be delivering through us. They might have completed it beforehand. Industry placement. We might be able to go to the relevant organisations as a forum member and get the answers for everybody rather than each individual centre doing that. So if you think that would be beneficial, drop anything in the chat or by all means mention it as well. We've also got in those sort of areas, like yesterday we had an insight into some centres who were already delivering the design and planning, the Wave 1 T Level as well. So to bring centres together like that with centres who are already doing it, you know, even if it's remotely this year, it must be really tough delivering that new qual remotely. But we have got some of our centres who have been on these calls actually delivering T levels already. So they're already running the industry placement and things like that. So it might be really good to bring people together for that. So if that's something beneficial, drop it in the chat, drop it in the survey, whatever you feel, and we'll see if we can get that off the ground. I would like it to be driven by centres and maybe chaired by someone from a centre, and we can then maybe drop in when we see fit to answer your questions rather than it be driven maybe by city and guilds moving forward. That I would see that would be beneficial for centres. There might be sometimes, you know, you want to talk as centres, you don't want city and guilds there. That might be, you know, I would see that would be quite viable as a centre manager moving forward. You might want to talk openly and honestly just as centres and maybe not with other people in attendance. So we'll have a look into that as well, just to give you a heads up what comes out of some of the other sessions. So I'm going to close the slides. I'm going to stop sharing. Everybody should be able to access that chat function to access the survey. And just if there's any other questions, feel free to raise your hand or drop anything in the chat now. I'm not sure if colleagues have got anything else they want to mention before we close.
There's nothing from me, Rob. Thank you.
Nothing from me, Rob, but just thank you from everyone, really. Just obviously, you know, conscious that there is a lot of information and there is going to continue to be more information that will come out from us over the course of the next few months. So please stay in touch, really, and just, you know, look at your inbox whenever you see anything from us, and we'll continue to provide updates. But again, you know, if there is anything you're unsure about, you know, do please get in touch with us and we'll try and help wherever we can.
Yeah, definitely. And if you've got contact details now on the slides, we will be following up with the slides, as I said, after today's session. This is the last one. And we can then look at supporting you in the future and what other sessions we can put on. Well, that's the driver we're really asking for from the survey. So I'm going to leave things open so you can, you know, you should be able to access that survey anytime by dropping into the meeting on Teams. If you could complete that, we'd appreciate it. And apart from that, I'd like to bid you good day. Enjoy the rest of your week and stay